As temperatures rise in the summer, so do the power bills. Up and down the West Coast, from Clearwater to Central Florida, residents are seeing higher bills attributed to last year's devastating hurricanes. Now, Florida Power and Light is asking for what could become the largest utility hike in U.S. history. And higher rates are pushing at least one major city to push back. Severe storms last year snapped West Coast Florida's energy grid. Many neighborhoods spent more than a week in the dark after back-to-back hurricanes of Helene and Milton. All the recovery work to that electric grid came with a price tag. Rate hikes were approved for utilities like Duke and Tampa Electric, the hikes hitting monthly bills hardest now during peak summer months. Some customers are paying as much as 30% more than this same time last year.
I guess it was two months ago, our bill increased by about $180.
I was floored. I was completely floored. I was like, there's got to be a mistake. I wanted to have the meter checked because this is ridiculous.
Now, Florida Power and Light is proposing a nearly $10 billion rate increase over the next 4 years. The current rates set by the Public Service Commission will expire at the end of this year. To translate the proposed rates into a typical bill using FP&L's online resource, consider this. A customer paying $134 for 1,000 kilowatt hours of power would pay $142 next year. The rates would gradually increase every year after that. And by 2029, that same customer's bill would reach about $152 per kilowatt hour.
We have proposed a plan that will allow us to keep making smart investments to reliably serve a growing state while keeping bills well below the national average.
The AARP has come out as one of the largest opponents to the proposed rates. The advocacy group says the rates will hurt consumers while possibly giving FP&L investors a financial return of nearly 12%.
And when you have a cost go up and you force someone to choose, do I run my AC or do I go get a prescription that I need? That's a tough choice. And it puts a financial strain on everyone when we're really increasing costs when they may not be necessary or maybe not even at the high point that we're looking at the increases coming our way might be.
Public hearings on the proposed rate hike will start next week with a final decision expected by fall. Meanwhile, local leaders are exploring alternatives. This week, the city of St. Petersburg agreed to research the possibility of replacing Duke Energy by creating its own municipal utility. And Mitch, I want to start with you. You were on a call this week where it was detailed part of this FP&L request for the hike. Tell us about that.
Yeah, as you mentioned in the setup there, almost $10 billion, which is apparently the most ever. FP&L, they're the biggest in the state of Florida utility, one of the biggest in the country, if not the biggest, actually. Mm-hmm. I think they have 6 million individual accounts, over 12 million customers. So this is really huge. And as you saw, they say it's just to stay competitive, basically. But this is an escalation that is not unique to FP&L, Tampa Electric, Duke. They've all raised their rates in the last few years. And consumer advocates have made a big issue about it. The question is, what do we do about it? There is a Public Service Commission, as you mentioned. The hearing will begin, I believe, next week. There'll be maybe a week of hearings of this, final decision in the fall. And the question is, it doesn't have to be this high. The Public Service Commission can review all of this and maybe make an adjustment on it. It does not have to go this high. They're going to get a lot of input, and hopefully they just don't rubber stamp the request.
The last time that a city, in that case it was the city of Clearwater, basically thought of leaving the electric company and starting their own utility, the price tag was $1.1 billion. How did that work
let's clarify that. Actually, that was not Clearwater's own study. They actually we're still waiting to hear from Clearwater's own study, which should come in the next few weeks. Mm-hmm. They did pay their own consultant, I believe, like $500,000 for that. What you're referring to is a study that Duke themselves did. Nobody asked them to, but they went out and got a consultant who came back with, I think, between 1.2, 1.3, and 1.5 billion. Just incredible amount, very expensive. Whether that is in fact the case, we'll it can be confirmed or disputed when Clearwater's own consultant comes up with a report. But there's no question it's going to be very expensive, and that is obviously a discouragement why other cities don't do this, because it is not unique to do this. We know there are, I think, at least 15 around these municipal utilities around the state. I know, Charles, you said you come from Orlando. You grew up with that there. Tallahassee has it. Lakeland has it. So it's not unique. And in fact, so there's a reason, not just high rates, but also just unhappiness with customer service, maybe trees being trimmed in a way that they don't appreciate, communities don't appreciate, underground lines that are not done. So there's a lot of dissatisfaction with these power companies, and at least Clearwater is making a step at this, of trying to examine this, and St. Petersburg may follow suit.
Charles, what legal recourse, or what recourse in general do consumers have when the electric companies, the utility companies, ask for these hikes?
Certainly. The Public Service Commission does have an avenue for consumer citizens to make a complaint. That's determined by the actual Public Service Commission. If that's not something to their satisfaction, they can go ahead and bring that issue up in court. They can go ahead and bring an action before the Florida Supreme Court to challenge that rate increase. The question is, what's the barometer there? Is this a matter of trying to get higher return on equity, or we have like infrastructure issues that the grid requires? So if it's a matter of pure profit, maybe you've got a better argument. Then we have to repair the grid, we have to have more infrastructure needs, the like. So the biggest thing that consumers can do is their voice. To go ahead and show up and be present at the meetings, to go ahead and advise their position, to say we're against this because we think it doesn't make sense. It's all about profit, not about grid maintenance issues.
The Florida Power and Light has said that this is below the national average, that these are costs that they are making because they are necessary after repairs to the electric grid after these devastating storms last year. And so we did some checking, and so just to see if that's accurate, and the national average is 17.47 cents per kilowatt hour. And according to SaveOnEnergy.com, in the state of Florida, it's 14.98 cents per kilowatt hour. So that is accurate. Dr. Goswami, is the push towards solar driven in part by these conversations about raising the hikes?
Well, consumers are concerned about how much they pay, and solar becomes attractive for them, and that certainly gets them to see what they can do in terms of solar power. But I think the solar power there is good both for the consumers and the utilities, because it puts power into the grid at the time when the load is the maximum for them. So that saves them that part of the load, which they can sell more expensive to other utilities.
And Bill, are you seeing more of your customers asking for this, asking for alternatives, looking into it?
Yeah, as rates have continued to go up over the last 10 years, we've seen a tremendous growth in the solar industry in Florida in terms of rooftop solar. FPL obviously is doing a lot of solar themselves as well. They see the value in the technology and in the investment, but for sure, Florida is now, I think, either number 2 or even number 1 in terms of annualized solar deployments, even compared to California. I think we actually beat California this year. So
wow.
Yeah.
Mitch, when you touched upon this moments ago, but when you hear cities talk about creating their own utility companies, explain what the difference is between the municipal utility company and then the Duke, the FPNL.
Right. They do it themselves, and they take all over the structures and all of that, and the billing, everything to do with that. It's interesting that there really hasn't been one, I believe, in 20 years. I think Winter Haven was the last city to try to do this. So I don't know if it's because it's more prohibitively more expensive to do it. I know places like Orlando, apparently 100 years ago is when they did it. So that's when you've seen a lot of that already happen. So it's a bigger reach to try to maybe do this now because of the expense. And I know I see some commentary commentary on this, and people are freaked out when they think of this. Some people are really worried about it, and they go, "Oh my God, yes, we can complain about Duke and the high prices, whatever, but they're there. When the storms happen, we see the guys there, and like that's not going to happen." And those are good questions that I think the study will come out and we'll get more information on when Clearwater again comes out with us in the next few weeks. St. Petersburg is deciding whether to do it or not. They have more customers than Clearwater is right now. I was reading that the state of Maine actually considered this a year and a half ago, and they decided not to because it was going to be like $13 billion for the whole state. A little too far to cross, but nevertheless, the thought was there in Maine, right? So I think it's national that the dissatisfaction with your utilities and the fact that it's a monopoly, right? And you don't have competition. That's what makes it a struggle. Tampa, I remember, I'm going to go back to like 2007, 2008, when their relationship with TECO, their contract was going to, I think it actually had expired. They were going on like a year-to-year contract. And there was 3 of the 7 city council members really wanted them to open it up and maybe like do our own thing and always, again, look at it. And Mayor Pam Iorio was in charge at the time. That ultimately did not happen. So this is not even new, this whole conversation in the Tampa Bay area. It just reached the point where it is now. And I think that there's really, interesting arguments all the way around about it. But the number one thing that's going to be maybe not happen is because of the cost.
And this isn't something new. So typically there are trends that occur and reoccur anytime there's conversations like this. And Charles, as in the arena of consumer protection, we were talking about that when these conversations happen, then you have quote unquote bad actors come and approach residents directly. And so share some of that, because that may start to happen more and more frequently as the conversations intensify about possible rate hikes.
The number one red flag would be when someone comes to your door and solicits you for some service. Post-hurricane, for a new roof, for solar. If you were doing your own due diligence, you have a need, you call somebody, they come out, you do your own selection, that's one thing. But where people are actually being asked to go ahead and have these services, and at that point in time, we could have tons of awful stories about people that have been taken advantage of by really unscrupulous folks in all these different trades. It's not a matter of solar only, but roofing and post hurricane repairs and such. So when someone comes to your house, be very, very cynical. Do you need this service? What are you getting? Read the fine print. Look at the online reviews. That's a good place for people to see whether or not there's been any problem in the past. Look online. Have they been sued before by anybody? So do your homework before you sign any kind of contract.
Because they're reading the headlines too.
Yes.
So they are going to mention all of these possible rate hikes. Let us help you.
We can fix your problem. We can fix your problem with these increasing rates. We're going to give you power back. Your power is going to get money back. You're going to make money on this. All those promises.
Be weary.
And a lot of times they're not coming to pass.